guys, welcome back to Cozy Time Corner. I've got my pillow and my blanket and my fuzzy friend. Today I brought Winnie the Pooh and I've got my drink. So, let's get started. All right. Get nice and cozy and comfortable. There you go, nice and warm. All right. So let's review the characters so far that we've learned about in our book, Space Shuttle Scam. So, the first set of characters we have is Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose. And they are going to Florida on a plane. And they are going to Florida on a plane with Wallace Wallace, their favorite author. Now, Wallace Wallace is her first and last name. Her brother, Walker Wallace, is the pilot of the plane. And they are all going to go visit Wallace Wallace's Aunt Alice in Florida. Now, when they get to Florida and they land the plane, Aunt Alice isn't there to pick them up. Somebody else is there to pick them up. That was, let me find it. I forgot his name. I am so sorry, guys. What was the name of the person who picked them up? Oh, Kenny. That's right. It was Kenny who picked them up from the airport. And the reason Aunt Alice didn't come was because there was a mountain lion in front of her yard, and she was very upset about it. So Kenny brought them back to Aunt Alice's house. And when they got to Aunt Alice's house, they also met Hallie, who was the handyman. Now, last time we left off, they were inside the house. Aunt Alice had come out to meet them and brought them in the house. Josh started to say something about how much he liked cookies, but he stopped when something licked his hand. So now we are on chapter 3. Here we go. Let me get a quick drink. All right, here we go. Chapter 3. Josh pulled his hand away and let out a yelp. A small bundle of fur with shining black eyes was looking up at him. "This is my sweet dog Bear," Alice said. "He's just saying hello to you, Josh, but he is hungry for these cookies I'm about to plop in the oven." And there is a picture of Aunt Alice and the puppy. Alice opened the kitchen door. "Outside, little bear," she ordered. "Go help Howie clean the gutters." The dog hopped across the threshold and took off around a corner of the house. "Bear adores Howie," she said. "You should see this place when Howie brings his kids over. They chase Bear and he chases them right back." She started wiping the table. "Dink, be a dear and put the milk in the fridge, would you?" Dink opened the fridge and slid the milk jug inside. He noticed a bunch of magnets sticking to the fridge door. One was a plastic alligator holding a note in its mouth. In big handwriting, the note said, "Please buy more paper towels, H." "Aunt Alice, Kenny told us about the mountain lion this morning," Wallace said. "You must have been terrified." "I didn't see the critter, but poor Kenny was pretty shook," she said. "I was in the house. Suddenly, he came running in the back door and showed me a picture of the lion on his cell phone. I ran to the window, but by then it was gone." "Well, I'm glad nothing worse happened," Wallace said. "It's not the mountain lion I'm worried about," Alice said. "Kenny said he'd put alligators and snakes by the pond out back." Alice shuddered. "Now, snakes and gators I can do without, especially with Little Bear playing in the yard." Just then, they all heard a small engine. Dink looked through the kitchen door and saw a thin woman with red hair climb off a motor scooter. She was wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and sandals. And there is the picture of her. "That'll be Hannah," Alice said. The woman came into the kitchen carrying some mail, and Alice introduced everyone. "My niece and her friends came all the way from Connecticut to see me," Alice said. "Pleased to meet you," Hannah said. "I'll make y'all some lemonade." She left the mail on the table and walked into the pantry. "That'll be lovely, hon," Alice said as she looked through her mail. "My husband liked the article in this." She slid a magazine called Super Science over to Dink. The magazine cover showed 2 guys in rubber boots wading in a green pond. The caption read, "Green goo that can save the planet." Alice picked up a white card that was mixed among her envelopes. "Oh, drat! Here's another of these dumb postcards," she said. "What postcards, Auntie?" Wallace asked. "Someone wants to buy this house and property," Alice said. "They keep pestering me. I've got half a dozen postcards in the past few weeks." She slid it over to Wallace, who read it aloud. If you are interested in selling your home, please call or text me immediately. 321-555-9000. Sincerely, M.K. Wallace said, Your address is on it, but there's no stamp. I guess they just stick the postcards in the mailbox, Alice said. It's signed M.K., Wallace said. Who's that? Her aunt shrugged. No idea, she said, dropping the postcard into a drawer near the fridge. I haven't gotten back to that person. Then, a week ago, a woman started calling. Don't know how she got my number, but she said she wanted to buy my house. Said she'd pay cash. Good thing Hannah took the calls, or I would have told her something not very nice. Are you thinking of selling? Wallace asked. Alice shook her head, then sighed. Maybe I should, she said. Just get a small, safe apartment in town. No animals, no burglars, but darn it, I don't want to move. Burglars, Wallace said. She took her aunt's hand. Auntie, have you been robbed? Not the house, Alice said. A few weeks ago, I noticed that your uncle's diary and his favorite fountain pen had gone missing from his desk in the barn. His father gave him that pen, and Barney treasured it. Oh, and a batch of letters he saved in a file folder are also gone. Are you sure the things were stolen? Wallace asked. Could Uncle Barney have put them away someplace? Hannah and I searched the desk and the barn, Alice said. Those things were there a few weeks ago, and then, poof, they were gone. Maybe I have ghosts in my barn. Josh gulped loudly. Don't mind me, young man, Alice said. I'm just fretting. Now, come see where you're sleeping. And I'm going upstairs for a shower and a nap, Wallace told her aunt. Alice slid a tray of cookies into the oven. You kids follow me. I'll bring the lemonade, Hannah said. Lovely, hun, Alice said. She grabbed a key ring from a hook by the door and herded Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose out to the yard. Aren't we sleeping in the house? Dink asked. Alice shook her head. I have a special place for kids, she said. Follow me. Alice took them down a stone path across the lawn. Dink noticed a picnic table in the shade of some oak trees. A tall red barn stood at the end of the path, and Dink could see a pond behind it. Long sheets of feathery-looking gray stuff hung from the oak tree branches. What's that stuff? Josh asked. He stood on tiptoes and tried to reach some that hung over his head. That's Spanish moth, Alice said. My husband used to call it Grandpa's beard. I wouldn't touch it, though. All kinds of critters live inside it. What kind of critters? Josh asked, pulling his hand back. It's a favorite place for mosquitoes to hide, Alice said. Spiders go in to eat the mosquitoes. Bats fly in to eat the spiders. And snakes climb up there to eat the bats. Josh looked down at the ground. Are there a lot of snakes around here? He asked. Alice nodded. Plenty of snakes live in Florida, but only a few types are venomous, she said, walking toward the barn. What's venomous? Josh whispered. It means poisonous, Ruth Rose said. Chapter 4. The barn door was secured with a padlock. The sliding door was decorated with a painting of a space shuttle hurtling across the blue sky. A sign above the door said, Welcome to the space shuttle. There's a picture of that. Howie painted the door and sign last week, Alice said. Isn't it wonderful? He's really good, Josh said. To the right of the door, a small room had been added to the barn. Dink saw a sign that said Comet Cafe. There was a few tables and chairs in front, sitting in the shade of a tall palm tree. Teachers bring classes of kids to see the barn, Alice said. No kids are coming this week because of spring vacation. But when schools are in session, I get a couple of busloads a week. On the left side of the sliding door, another room jutted out from the barn wall. The room had 4 windows and a bright yellow screen door. This is the bunkhouse where you'll sleep, Alice said. She pushed the screen door open, making the hinges creak like a door in a scary movie. Alice flipped on a light switch. The walls were light purple, like the sky just before it gets dark. A mobile of the planets and the sun hang from the ceiling. Bunk beds stood against opposite walls. Dink noticed the bathroom at the end of the room. This is excellent, Josh said. Who made the cool mobile? Howie And he did all the painting too, Alice said. When horses lived in the barn, the saddles and food were kept here. My husband and Howie added a bathroom and built the bunks. Josh leaned toward Ruth Rose's ear. The walls almost match your outfit, he said with a grin, like a blueberry milkshake. My outfit is the color of spring flowers, Ruth Rose told Josh. Dink looked through one of the window screens. Why is the pond all green? He asked. That's algae, Alice said. Green, slimy stuff that grows like crazy here. My husband asked some scientists about it, and they told him algae grows so fast because of the fertilizer people use on their lawns. This bunkhouse is perfect, Ruth Rose said. Thanks a lot, Auntie A. You're entirely welcome, Alice answered. Pick your beds, but check the blankets for scorpions. You're kidding, right? Josh asked. We have 3 kinds of scorpions in Florida, Alice said. None of them are deadly, but they do have a nasty sting. She pulled a purple blanket off one of the lower bunks and shook it out. Then she ran her hand inside the pillowcase and sheets. Nothing hiding in here, she said. Josh threw his backpack on the bed Alice had just checked. Oh, and peek inside your shoes before you put them on in the morning, Alice said. Scorpions like to hide in dark places. No way, Josh said. I'm sleeping with my sneakers on. Dink tossed his backpack on the bunk above Josh's. I won't let any critters get you, Josh, he said. Josh shook his head. We don't have scorpions in Connecticut, he mumbled. I'll leave you to get settled, Alice said. Come for lemonade when... Suddenly a scream through the windows. What on earth? Alice cried. Dink looked out the window again. It's Hannah, he said. Alice and the kids ran outside. Hannah was standing next to the picnic table. On the ground by her feet were a tray, a pitcher, and 4 plastic drinking glasses. She was crying and shaking her head. Alice grabbed Hannah in a hug. Honey, what is it? She asked. What happened? And there's a picture of Alice hugging Hannah. Hannah wiped her eyes. It was under the table, she said, pointing. It ran over my foot. What ran over your foot? Alice said. A rattlesnake, Hannah said. Goodness, Alice said. Did it bite you? No, it slithered away, Hannah said, holding Alice's hand. Just then Howie came running. What's going on? He asked. Bear showed up and started lapping at the spilled lemonade. Hannah saw a rattlesnake under the table, Alice said. Howie looked to where Alice was pointing. Are there really rattlesnakes around here? Josh asked. Yep, but I've never seen one, Howie said. They're shy and keep out of sight. Hannah bent to pick up the tray. Leave that, Alice said. We'll take care of it. You go in the house and relax. Maybe check on my cookies? Hannah hurried across the yard to the house. What other poisonous snakes live in Florida? Ruth Rose asked Howie. We have several, he said. The ones I know about are rattlesnakes, water moccasins, copperheads, and coral snakes. Those are pretty ones, the coral snakes. They have red, yellow, and black bands around their bodies like ribbons. Everyone looked at the ground. Do any poisonous ones come near the bunkhouse? Josh asked. Howie shook his head. Not likely. If a snake sees a human or a dog, it'll hide, he said. Plus, we have skunks and raccoons around here, and the snakes are afraid of them too. Skunks? Josh whispered. I'll clean up the lemonade stuff, Howie offered. Thanks, you're a dear, Alice said. Come on, kids. Alice unlocked the padlock and slid the barn door open. When the kids stepped inside, dim blue lights came on. Wow, Josh said. The inside of the barn had been turned into a night sky. All 4 walls, the ceiling, and the floor were painted dark blue with bright stars. Planets hung from the ceiling on thin wires. A large white moon had been painted on the back wall. In front of the moon stood cutouts of 3 astronauts in space suits. Oops, there you go. This is incredible, Dink said. He spun around, trying to take it all in. It's like being in outer space. Alice twisted a dimmer switch on the wall, and the lights got brighter. My husband worked for Kennedy Space Center. He and some of his engineer friends built it all in their spare time. What's that? Ruth Rose asked. She was pointing at a 20-foot-tall metal contraption leaning against a wall. One side was open, and leather seats were visible. A ladder was attached to one side. There's a small replica of a space shuttle, Alice told her. My husband saw the real ones at Kennedy Space Center. Josh was looking up at the silver tube hanging from the ceiling by cables. It was the same length as a space shuttle. Is that a submarine? He asked Alice. It's a space simulator, Alice said. Barney made that too. It moves forward and backwards and rolls from side to side, making you think you're traveling in space with no gravity. I definitely have to try that, Ruth Rose said. How do you get up there? Alice pointed to a switch on the wall. I can lower it, and there are buttons inside to control the thing. Howie's kids love playing astronaut in it. Why did your husband build all this? Dink asked. Alice smiled. He was a space nut, she said, always regretting he couldn't go into space, so he started building and collecting stuff. She walked over to a small desk in one corner. This is where Barney wrote in his diary, she said. He also sent letters to scientists, and a lot of them wrote back to him. He kept the letters in a fat folder. Now the folder is gone, along with his diary and pen. She pulled open the desk drawer. It was empty. Why was he writing to scientists? Dink asked. Barney was concerned about the environment, Alice said. He walked this property every day taking notes. He even made trails through the jungle out there. Then he wrote to scientists at NASA and the Space Center with his ideas. How to turn Spanish moss into food for cattle. How to use pond algae for racing cars. How to bring in seaweed from the coast to fertilize crops. On the desk was a green blotter stained with ink. A jar of pencils sat on the blotter. Taped to the jar was a sign that said Barney's Stuff. Josh pulled a shiny pen from the jar. Is this your husband's pen? He asked. Oh my goodness, it is, Alice said. She grabbed the pen and gave Josh a hug. My eyesight. The little sign on the jar caused a thought to pop into Dink's mind. Then it popped out again. He closed his eyes, trying to remember something he'd noticed earlier. Dink felt it was important, but he couldn't bring the thought back. Around the huge room were displays of space suits and packages of the food astronauts ate while in space. Autographed pictures of at least 20 astronauts hung on one wall. Samples of moon rocks were lined up on a shelf. Did those really come from the moon? Ruth Rose asked. They sure did, Alice said. Astronaut Neil Armstrong gathered rocks when he walked on the moon. She pointed to one rock. See, he signed this one. What's this? Josh asked. He was standing at a plastic display case. Inside was a strange-looking object shaped like a capital letter H. It was about 4 feet long and sat on a sheet of plywood lying across 2 wooden trestles. Part was cut away to show compartments inside it. There are itty-bitty people inside, Josh said. That's my husband's replica of the International Space Station, Alice said. There you go. She pointed up. The real one is up in the sky right now with real astronauts living in it. Josh peered inside the miniature space station. What do astronauts in space eat? He asked. From what I hear, nothing very tasty, Alice said, heading for the door. But you get to eat some of my famous cookies. That's the end of chapter 4. So there's a couple of interesting things in here that Dink found. Some thoughts he's trying to remember. So we'll come back tomorrow and we'll find out some more. Have a great day, guys. Bye.